It is lyrical in the extreme. I recently came across the most wonderful term to describe this. And KARSHAN calls it the slow wisdom, the slow trance of wisdom. It is through that lyrical transitional space that one can arrive at that creative place in which one feels wise, even omnipotent, if all goes well. But as I told Marco this morning, with that omnipotence must come a heavy dose of humility, or the kind of power one feels for the moment will be squashed. And so one must be very alert, respectful of those moments of genius, really, to not interfere. And so it is absolutely a lyrical moment, very much like poetry. Anne Carson is a great, great poet, and I feel quite close to some of her thinking, largely because, as we're sitting in front of the lagoon here in Venice, she writes so beautifully about swimming. She, like she's a keen swimmer. And this phrase that I use, the slow trance of wisdom, she uses to describe the swimmer. She asks at the end of this particular essay, how slow is the slow trance of wisdom which the swimmer swims into? So that's really what I would say. The body will follow, but it is very much a question of entering this transitional space, this lyrical space, because as I have known and written about for many, many years, as a result of my master's degree, that it is here and only here that anything original can get made. In the summer in particular, I begin a workday by swimming in my pond. And it is that breathing in and breathing out which positions me, puts me in pace and in place to take on those same rhythms and same numbers that I will have counted out in the pond. I take those with me, of course, into the studio, but in fact they were with me before I went into the pond. Breathing always to a rhythm. So it's a breath. One can even say a breath of life without overstating it. My whole work really is founded on rhythm, and that is what we do when we breathe. That kind of marks, the rhythm marks the breath. This morning, as I was being filmed by Marco, it's very much counting to a rhythm, breathing in and breathing out. It's fundamental to the work. In selecting the show for Venice, the drawings for Venice, it was not a question of creating anything new, but rather the selection process, which would give the best sense for this liquid city. And I should say it's a great chance for me to be able to come back now after the inauguration and to see especially those 4 drawings, because they are really pictures. They're almost wavescapes, the first 3. And the last one is as if it is the kind of reflection onto the facades of Venice. I fully acknowledge that I take these ideas from the wonderful collection of essays on Venice by Joseph Brodsky, a book which was given to me days after I left my inauguration here. It's called A Watermark, and it's an essay on Venice. And what he suggests, he said he's always thought that God is time. At least the Spirit of God is time. And then if you could see the Spirit of God across the surface of the water, you would see its reflection. He goes on to say that you see those reflections in the lace-like facades of Venice. And importantly, he said, of course, once those reflections are marked, the mark of time, the mark of water on those facades, they're in space. And space, he said, knows it is inferior to time, and it answers that by showing that it possesses one quality that time does not have, and that's beauty. And so I am able also to mark time. I mark it, I make a mark of time on my sheet of paper, not on a facade, but it is remarkable that the drawings in this exhibition seem to mark both time on the water and then space, reflecting very much the rectangles of the facades. That is precisely, within 4 drawings, a microcosm of why this work is really very fitting for the watery, the liquid city of Venice.
Prosedit me in initio viarum suarum, antequam quinquam faceret a principio, ab eterno ordinata sum, et ex antiquis antequam terra fieret. Longum erant abisi, et ego iam concepta erat.
The work comes directly from the body, and it is organic in the extreme. But the astonishing thing is that the forms that it marks out are the perfect Euclidean constructions. And they're marked out exactly as Euclid tells us to do. And so, when all goes well, there can be a balance, and these two extremes can indeed come into harmony. I was very struck by a book review. The book is called A New History of Balance, 1250 to 1375. And apparently in this period, there appeared a new model of equilibrium or balance. Crucially, it took hold in centers of culture, and as quickly as it appeared, it disappeared, but it had influence on politics and society of the time. The review ends in, I think, a very interesting way to say that there were two ancestors for this early modern period model of balance, the first being Aristotle, but more importantly, Galen of Pergamon. Now, I know nothing about him really, except to say that as a doctor, he suggested that human bodies are never always well. He undermined the sense of the absolute, making room for those wobbles, the equilibrio as opposed to equilibrium, the fact that we are always trying to establish balance, and it may be fleeting. And it is precisely that balance which one sees me aspire to in the work.